Welcome to the Good Reading Podcast, proudly sponsored by Book People Gift Cards. A Book People gift card is the perfect gift for readers of all ages. Simply order your gift card online at bookpeoplegiftcards.org.au. Redeem in any one of over 500 bookshops across Australia. Visit bookpeoplegiftcards.org.au. Before turning to crime fiction, Chris Hammer was a journalist for more than 30 years. Chris's first novel, Scrublands, was an instant #1 bestseller and won the prestigious UK Crime Writers Association John Creasy New Blood Dagger Award. Since then, Chris has written a string of award-winning bestsellers including Silver, Trust, Treasure and Dirt, The Tilt, and The Seven. Today I'm talking to Chris Hammer about his 7th crime thriller, The Valley. Chris, welcome to the Good Reading Podcast.
Greg, great to be with you.
After 6 best-selling crime thrillers in the space of 6 years, and now The Valley as your 7th, it would be fair to say that Chris Hammer is on a roll. But what looks so effortless in the final draft rarely is. Does the creative urge come easily to you?
Yeah, I think that's what lets me do a book a year. It's not actually self-discipline. It's I'm addicted to it. I just love doing it. And so, yeah, the creative urge is there. Whether I can satisfy it is another question. Some days, it's a real struggle. Other days it's better. But yeah, what I found after 30 years of being a journalist is I just love making stuff up. It's an imagined world, but it's very much, modern contemporary Australia. There's no magic in it or occult or ghosts or anything like that. It's not set in an imaginary world, but it's a reimagination of the world in which we live.
And we'll get to talk about that in a moment. But does the process get easier as the number of books begins to stack up?
No, not really. Some aspects of it do. Some of the craft skills I probably pick up a bit earlier on if something isn't working. I'm more probably better at self-critiquing. But the central part of the book is the story. And the story only comes to me slowly as I write the story. I don't plot my books out in advance. I sort of dive in the deep end and they kind of evolve as I'm writing. And so inevitably there are some days where I just get stuck. Some problem in the plot won't resolve itself. And that bit definitely doesn't get easier.
Do you go through periods of fermentation, either intentional or otherwise? And what might that produce in your writing?
Oh, absolutely. As I said, I'm rather addicted to the process. So I'm going to be writing most mornings, and some days it'll be great. The words will flow. I know exactly what I'm doing. But on other days, I'm really stuck and I spend them staring at the screen, hardly write a thing. Then often it's later on in the day or the next day, I'll be out doing some exercise. I'll be walking or riding a bike, something like that, or cooking dinner or something, and then the idea will come to me. Oh, I know what's going to happen. It's a very strange feeling, Greg. I've heard other authors say the same thing. It's almost as if the story is already there. It's just up to you as the author to discover it, those twists and turns, to realise what the characters are truly like and what they would truly do. Now, that can't be the case, of course. It is imagined, it is created. Sometimes you do have that strong sense that when you finally realise, oh, I know how the story is shaping itself, I know where it's going now, it does feel like it's already been written somehow and you're the one who's just kind of excavating it. Although I do subscribe very much to the theory that inspiration and ideas comes from writing and not the other way around. So if you just wait around for inspiration, it may never come. Whereas, if you start writing in the morning, and some days I definitely don't feel like it, I've just got this sort of urge or addiction. And then half an hour in or an hour in, the ideas will start flowing. And 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours later, I'll read back what I've written. I'll go, oh, that's pretty good. Where did that come from? So, yeah, I'm an advocate of that. If you want to write something, you've got to start writing.
Prior to your crime fiction career, you wrote two non-fiction books, The River in 2010 and The Coast in 2012. Both The River and The Coast were accounts of journeys that you undertook. I wondered if some seeds were sown back then, particularly in terms of place in the Australian landscape, that have blossomed in your crime fiction.
Look, absolutely. Those books, I'm not sure I could have written the fiction books if I hadn't done those two non-fiction books. They're narrative non-fiction. I am telling a story in them. It's a story of my journey through the landscape. And I think that's what really got me hooked on writing, is those books. But also they did provide some of the settings for my books. And anyone who's read my books will realise that setting is a very important facet of the books. In that first trip, The River, I travelled through the Murray-Darling Basin at the height of a millennial drought. So this was the summer of 2008, 2009. And some of the locations for my crime books come from that trip. The landscape in scrublands, the Barmah Millawa Forest in the Tilt, the coastal town in Silver. So all those settings really I knew already from doing those non-fiction books.
The setting for the valley is unequivocally and specifically in Australia, in New South Wales. Placed precisely, fully described and familiar. Dusty country roads, steel gates, open and closed, starlit nights, secluded valleys. There's not much ambiguity there about where it is. And maps have also appeared in several of your books, including In the Valley. Is establishing that point of absolute reference within a work of fiction important to you?
The setting is very important in my books. As I said before, the stories evolve as I write them. So I'm just starting with a few seeds to get me going. But one of the most important ones there is the setting. It's almost like this is the stage, which I will populate with characters, where the events in the book will unfold. The characters will be influenced by the setting. I'll be influenced by the setting, how I write. The valley is set in a mountain valley in southeast New South Wales, based loosely on a real place called Araluen, which is just south of Braidwood. Not many people know about it because it's not on the way anywhere, but it's a lush place. It's quite bucolic, but financially it's fallen on hard times because its two big industries, gold mining and logging, have pretty much come to an end.
Let's get to the story. Wolfgang Burnside, age 33, body found in Memorial Park, submerged in the Broken River, suspected drowning. Why has murder been assumed, and why are Detective Senior Constable Nell Buchanan and Detective Sergeant Ivan Lucic on their way to investigate what might not be a murder at all?
Ivan and Nell, these are the homicide detectives now based in Dubbo as a kind of rural flying squad for homicide, but they only investigate the difficult, the mysterious murders, because most murders can be handled by local detectives because there's nothing mysterious about them. And this is true to life. Most murders are just stupid acts of violence and there's no mystery about the perpetrator. In this case, the body of a local entrepreneur has been found by the banks of the river in the valley, and Ivan and Nell are sent to investigate very quickly. And this puzzles them. They're not sure why they're being sent so quickly. And the reason why is revealed later in the book. They get down there. This guy's clearly been murdered. So that's not in doubt. But then what happens, what at first seems like a standard homicide investigation suddenly becomes very complex and confronting for Nell, because the forensic team runs DNA checks on the body. They're trying to pick up a trace of the killer. But in doing so, they need to rule out the DNA of the victim. They sample that and they find that the victim is a close blood relative of Nell's. And this is confronting for Nell because she's adopted. She knows who her biological mother was, but she's never known the identity of her biological father. And the victim is closely related to her through her biological father. So as the story continues, and again, it's explained in the book why Ivan and Nell are persuaded or instructed to stay with the murder inquiry despite an obvious conflict of interest there for Nell. So on one hand, she's investigating this modern day killing that she and Ivan are trying to catch the killer. But on the other hand, she's digging into her own past, trying to work out what happened in the valley 30 years ago. As far as she knows, her mother never went there, but who knows, maybe she did. So there's kind of two investigations going on for Nell, and it becomes fairly confronting for her. In this story, there's a modern day story told in the present tense, and that's told from Nell's perspective. Ivan is in the story, but he's not a point of view character. There are two other point of view characters, one that starts in 1990 and one starts in 1994 in this same location in the valley. And these two characters eventually meet, they interact, they take different sort of perspective on events that are unfolding in the valley. And at first, it's not clear what the connection is, perhaps between them and the modern day mystery. And all of that is set up. The first thing you read in the book is a prologue set in 1988. And it's a big gold bullion robbery that goes wrong and ends up in a shootout. And it's not until you're well into the book that the reader is able to start drawing connections between that very dramatic prologue and the events that are unfolding in this rather sleepy, bucolic place, the valley.
And that is a big feature of your work, the small town setting. Scrublands is set in a small town in the depths of a drought. In the valley, it's the town of Saltwood. Both very enclosed settings with outsiders crossing the town limits, if you like. Friction seems inevitable. What possibilities do small town settings offer you across aspects of storytelling, plot, character, so on?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure what the answer is, why I'm so attracted to these small town settings. I was a journalist for a long time in Canberra, and people say, why don't you do a political thriller? I was a roving correspondent for many years. People say, why don't you do a big sort of geopolitical espionage type novel? But for some reason, I'm drawn to these small country towns, these regional settings. I think they're very atmospheric. The characters are of their location in a way that characters in a big city would perhaps be more anonymous in a way. Also, just as far as plot goes, all my books have multiple kind of mysteries in them, multiple crimes in a country town. Everyone knows everyone else. Everyone knows everyone else's business. So if different crimes end up being connected, it won't come as an outrageous coincidence. Whereas maybe in a big city, they would be. Some of my books, they have social issues just sort of in the background in a way. So the issues are surrounding climate change. In my books, you can find drought, you can find bushfires, you can find flood. That wouldn't really sit, say in the Sydney CBD, where, doesn't matter if it's a drought year or a flood year, the CBD doesn't change that much. I do have a book, Trust, that's set in Sydney, and that's got to do with high-level corruption and high finance and corruption in banking, that sort of thing. You couldn't set that storyline, in a country town. And similarly, my book, Silver, it's set on the coast, and it's about a town that has been a struggle town, but it's now looking like a boom town. And there's a lot of real estate speculation going on. So that's a story that definitely belongs, on the beach, on the coast, not, say in the outback where, unless there's a mine or something, they're not going to become a boom town.
Just wondering for a moment how the people of Araluen or similar country towns might feel about having all these murders placed in their vicinity.
Pretty good, I think, strangely enough. No, I a couple of years ago, my book, The Tilt, is set very much in a real location, and that's the Barmamillowa Forest. And I have heard back that there has been a bit of a tourist boom, but an influx of people who read the book and have wanted to go and see the river, to see the forest themselves. So in that sense, the locals are quite happy because they've had more, the tourist trade has picked up.
It's always good to contribute to the local economies in one way or another. Let's talk about the action in your books. Often action-packed, shootouts, they're very tension-packed. Where does the inspiration for a good shootout originate?
There's a very dramatic one at the start of this book. There's a very dramatic one in the beginning of Scrublands, of course. So compared to, say, some American books, guns don't play such a large role in my books. Probably, again, the exception there is that book set in Sydney. There's quite a bit of gun action in that one. In my book, Scrublands, it starts with a priest shooting 5 people dead. And later on in the story, in the book, the national media descends on the town because other crimes have been discovered there. And there was one review in America that said, it's an interesting insight into Australia that a shooting with a relatively low body count would attract the attention of the national media. I'm thinking, wow. Yeah, so it is different. The one thing about guns, I know nothing about guns and I'm not that interested in them, but there are people who are obsessed with them. And so if you write any kind of detail about a gun as a crime writer, you're opening yourself up to all sorts of criticism. So because you get the model wrong or you get something wrong about it. So nowadays, if you see a gun in one of my books, it's going to be big and black and threatening, and that's about all I'm going to describe. Because otherwise, for some readers, it will break the spell because they'll go, hang on, that gun didn't exist then, or something like that.
Do I detect a sense of nostalgia in your writing, a nostalgia for something lost, something hinted at, perhaps in your non-fiction that's made its way into your fiction? Is there something flowing through, a connecting thread from your non-fiction to your fiction?
It's definitely there. It's a good question. I haven't thought about that. It's definitely there in the river and the coast, particularly in the river, because it was the time of the worst drought in recorded history in Eastern Australia. And there was a sense of country towns dying and things being lost and history being lost. So that sense of nostalgia is very strong in that book. It's interesting, though, that you're seeing it flow through to the fiction books. And I think you're probably right there. But it's not something I've tapped into intentionally. It's probably just flowed through in my subconscious somehow.
Chris, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks for telling us all about your life and your books, and thank you for joining me on the Good Reading Podcast.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, Greg.
I've been talking to Chris Hammer about his latest crime thriller, The Valley. It's published by Ivan and Nell, and you can find it at goodreadingmagazine.com.au. My name's Greg Dobbs, and thanks for listening. This Good Reading Podcast was brought to you by Book People Gift Cards. Share the joy of reading with a Book People gift card. To find out more, visit bookpeoplegiftcards.org.au.